Welcome back to the Pistons Jack YouTube channel. On today's episode, we're going to talk about the Dennis Schroder sign and trade, all the updates here, including Malik Monk, John Collins, and some other names. We'll also talk about some of the point guards and power forwards that could fit this roster on a vet minimum. So let's get to it. All right, so let's kick off the show with a quick update on the three-team trade between the Warriors, Kings, and Pistons, where the Pistons would get Malik Monk, the Kings get Schroder, Jonathan Kuminga, and obviously the Warriors get Dario Saric and Devon Carter. Basically, the update here that affects this trade is from Anthony Slater over at The Athletic. He reported, we spoke about it yesterday, that he reported that the deal between those three never really got too close to being complete, but there was a nugget of information I missed and I think is really key in determining what else could be holding this up, and this is the interest from the Wizards in the Warriors, in Kuminga, and how this affects this trade. So obviously, Kuminga, the Warriors have a pretty high asking price. They're the ones who were initially holding up this three-team trade because they didn't like what the Kings were sending back for Kuminga. But with the Wizards, the reason it's interesting to note their interest in Kuminga is that they own the Warriors' 2030 first-round pick. That was a part of the Jordan Poole deal that was done a couple of years ago now. So that pick is very enticing to the Warriors. That's a lot more valuable than what the Kings have been offering. Obviously, the Wizards as well have a host of young players that the Warriors could be interested in in topping up. Whilst losing Kuminga, they could bring back maybe like someone like AJ Johnson in their first round pick. That could be of interest to them. Obviously, a sign and trade, you need to make the salaries work. But I think you get what you're saying, get what I'm saying. So that could be one of the reasons why it's being held up. We know overall the Warriors still have some interest in bringing Kuminga back, even if he's more likely wants to leave for a bigger role. They want to make sure if he leaves, they're getting back the absolute best deal they can because he's one of their best assets. They drafted him pick 7 in the 2021 draft, I believe, going all the way back then. So that could be what's holding it up. A team like the Wizards with that asset of the Warriors, I could definitely see them being interested in making a deal happen with the Wizards over the Kings. In turn, that obviously affects the Pistons. It doesn't affect the Pistons in the sense of them getting Malik Monk. They can still complete a clean sign and trade with the Kings to get Monk, and the Kings obviously get Dennis Schroder. But I think that deal could have been done a few days ago, and it wasn't because the Pistons backed out and then went to get Duncan Robinson. And then since then, the Kings are now endeavoring. They really want to get Kuminga, so they want to pull this three-team trade off. So if the Monk deal doesn't happen, I want to talk about John Collins. I spoke about him a little bit on last episode, but we've probably been talking a lot more about Malik Monk and how he could fit with the team. Brett Siegel noted from Clutch Points in an article full of intel on every team around the league or all the teams making deals that John Collins could be a potential name to watch with the Pistons because he said basically off the back of the fact if that three-team trade we've just been talking about doesn't happen, the Pistons are openly looking for other teams to bring into this sign and trade if the Warriors deal doesn't get done. And the Jazz could be a team. And I'm going to go through a potential trade that I think could work really well for the Pistons. But Collins, according to Brett, essentially has no market. No team is interested in him and his expiring $26 million deal. So the Pistons, this could be their chance to capitalize and get him for really cheap. And a lot of the time we've spoken about Collins on this show, it's been in the sense that the Pistons, in order to get to his $26 million, are going to have to add on Sasser and maybe Bobby Clintman to make the deal work financially. But I came across a trade today on Twitter and this was confirmed that this would work cap-wise. And I think this makes a lot of sense, obviously for our Pistons, but all teams involved. Essentially, as you can see here on the right of screen, the Pistons send out Dennis Schroder and a second-round pick to Sacramento. They also sign and trade Lindy Waters on a 3-year, $12 million deal to the Jazz with cash and a second. And we just get John Collins. The Pistons get Collins. This puts the Pistons under the tax with 14 players, one roster spot to fill. But you can go into the season with 14 players, I believe. I don't think it's until a certain date you have to fill out your roster. It might even be the trade deadline. So that's what they did last season. That's why they were able to add Dennis Schroder at the trade deadline without really sending out a player, or add Schroder and Lindy Waters with only sending out Wendell Moore. So this is really interesting because, like I said, the whole time I thought we'd have to give up 2 young players to get John Collins. But 2 seconds, really. I mean, I value Lindy Waters, but I think with the acquisitions the team has made, it is looking like his role on the team isn't really there for next season. With adding Chaz Lanier, adding Karis LeVert, adding Duncan Robinson, along with already having Ivy coming back, Sasa. So I think this deal makes a lot of sense to the Pistons. I think giving up 2 seconds is okay. The Pistons have like plus 4 or 5 second round picks on top of all the ones they already have given to them by the NBA for the upcoming years because they've acquired them in trades over the years. That was one thing Troy actually kind of did, was get some seconds, and Trajan got more at the deadline. So I'm okay with parting on 2 if it means you can fill that backup 4 position, and potentially Collins could be your starting 4 of the future if everything pans out. And that kind of brings me to Collins' fit on the team. I'm just going to quickly go through the depth chart I have for the Pistons if they were to add Collins. So you'd have Caden Sasser, point guard, Ivy LeVert, Lanier, shooting guard. You could kind of put all those 5 together as just guards, but just for the sake of each position, I've done it like that. Then you have Asar, Ron Holland, Duncan Robinson at the 3. In my opinion, they're all small forwards. Obviously, they can play up and down a bit. You then have Tobias, John Collins, and Bobby Clintman as your 4 men. Obviously, Collins can play some small ball 5, but he's at heart, I think, a 4. And then you have JD, Stu, and Paul Reed. So I think that balances out the roster very well. And whilst I think Malik Monk is the more talented player in terms of scoring and probably has a little bit more value around the NBA, even though it seems like the Kings are struggling to get rid of him, I think most people would say he's the more talented player. I think John Collins fits this roster and what we need for next season a lot better. You'd be getting him on expiring in a contract year, so you'd be getting the best out of him. He'd be motivated to play his best basketball to ensure he has another multi-year deal coming his way. So I think this could be a really nice fit. And if you had to ask me a week ago my thoughts on John Collins before free agency, they definitely wouldn't be what they are now because we've seen how free agency's unfolded. We've seen who the Pistons have added. And I think Collins fits a real need for this team. And you never know, he could be that starting 4 of the future. I think Tobias would start day 1 because of what the rapport he's built with the team and obviously JB. But you never know, maybe Collins, he's a really talented player still. He's still only like 26 years old, I think 27 maybe. He's still very young. He could come into a playoff environment after being at Utah for a year or 2 and really thrive. And maybe he takes that starting spot, or maybe once this deal's up, Tobias settles into a bench role or goes elsewhere and it's Collins' position for the future. He can shoot it a bit. He's reasonably athletic, solid rebounder, struggles a little bit defensively, but, I think he would fill a lot of needs. He can still space the floor. I think it'd be a really nice get. And I think he'd be a decent pick and roll partner for Cade as well in the absence of Jalen Duren. So there's some really nice things he can do on the roster. And that brings us to of course, let me know your thoughts on John Collins. I know a lot of fans, I think, are warming to the idea of him, but let me know your thoughts on that. Collins versus Monk, who would you like? But this brings us to our last topic of the day. Free agents the Pistons could sign as vet minimum. So I'll quickly touch on the power forwards again. These names would be much more likely if the Pistons don't get Collins or another 4-man in a trade. But Chris Boucher, apparently there's interest between the Pistons and him. There's interest with other NBA teams as well, but that I did see a report on that. Precious Achiuwa and Trey Lyles, haven't seen any reports, but they're both guys who could be looking for a vet minimum and could help the Pistons. Personally, I like Lyles better because of the shooting, but Precious is also still an intriguing young player from that 2020 draft, I think. So still could be some untapped potential. But the names I really want to spend a couple of minutes on here is the point guards. Because if we do go get John Collins and they do fill out that front court, the 3rd string point guard position, or some might say backup point guard position, is still probably the biggest need. And these are just the names left if I go on Spot Track and look at the free agents at the point guard position. You have Malcolm Brogdon, Gary Payton II, Corey Joseph, Kyle Lowry, and then Monte Morris, Flint native. Obviously, he played for the Pistons a couple of seasons ago, was injured, could barely get on the court, but before that season was known as one of the better backup point guards in the league. The other names I want to touch on are Chris Paul and Russell Westbrook. I'm just adding them in. I think both of them want to go back to California, back home to their home state. I think Chris Paul, there's some interest with him with the Clippers, and then Westbrook, we've heard, tied to the Kings. So I just want to mention them, but I don't think they'll be in Detroit. The only name here, like Malcolm Brogdon probably stands out as like the best name here, but I'm not sure if he'd be willing to do a vet minimum. Like maybe that's all the market is for him, especially if he hasn't signed yet, but he's coming off a season where he's paid 22 million. Once you sign that vet minimum deal, that's kind of the label you get around the NBA. So if he'd be open to a vet minimum with the Pistons, then I could see it being a good get. He was a former Players Association like president, I think, or high up there. So he's obviously a high character guy. I think he would fit in really nicely as a vet. Known for his shooting, playmaking at like 6'5", been suffered a lot of injuries. So I do wonder if Trajan would be interested, but I could see him helping. Gary Payton II, I really like him as a player, but I'm not sure he really helps as an actual point guard. He seems to me more like a guard, he's calling cards defense and kind of just shooting corner three. So I like him as a player. I'm not sure he really fits much of a need though. Corey Joseph, I always have love for him for Cade's rookie season. He might be past it, but maybe that's all we have. So, and the other name there was Kyle Lowry, where I just can't see him coming to the Pistons, but he's still a free agent. So do any of those names intrigue you? Did I miss a backup point guard option? Is there someone maybe the Pistons could swing a trade for to grab, who, if they get John Collins, could help fill those backup point guard minutes or third string minutes? You let me know in the comments, but thank you so much for watching. Appreciate everyone, all the love, especially recently on the channel. We're growing. It's been really cool to see some new faces or have some new people in the comments, and really enjoying it all. So thank you for the support. And we've got a whole lot more coverage to come with Summer League, the rest of the off season. So stick with me. Drop a comment, subscribe if you haven't already. But appreciate you all. And as always, go Pistons.